Hello everybody and welcome to this session on how to learn any programming language with special reference to Java and JavaScript, which are the two most popular programming languages. Now you might be really surprised to see the heading, how to learn any programming language, and might be thinking, is it really so easy to learn any programming language? Well, of course, every single programming language has its own idiosyncrasies, has its own ways, but all the mainstream programming languages have certain basic constructs and concepts. So if you understand those basic constructs or concepts of any programming language, then for all the mainstream programming languages, at least you will be able to read or write simple programs, if not able to actually use the advanced features. Because fortunately, programming languages are unlike the human languages in the sense that the human languages might be very different from one another, but the programming languages, at least the mainstream ones, they follow some patterns. At least the major concepts remain the same. The syntax, the semantics are different. So just to give you an example, I'm fortunate to have been able to code in 10 plus programming languages. And I'm telling you, it's not a pride. It's not at all very difficult, and if you also get a chance, you should also be able to do that. And I'm not claiming that I'm expert in all those 10 languages, but I can say that if I see the code, I should be able to understand, and I should also be able to write basic working functional code in all the programming languages. And you should also be able to do that. It's not rocket science. So please follow along with me in this session to understand the basic concepts of programming languages if you're new to programming. So what are the main aspects of any programming languages? The first aspect is where we store the data, which is the variable or the arrays, and how we operate on the data, which basically are the operators. And then comes the loops and the conditionals, how we iterate through different items, how we execute certain branching logic. And then comes exceptions on errors, like if there are some unwanted situations which are encountered during the program execution, then how do we actually handle them so that the program does not crash? And then all the programming languages has some internal utilities shipped with the core language to deal with everyday tasks like dealing with the dates, dealing with string, dealing with reading or writing of files, etc. And then another aspect of any programming language is using some custom data type, which is known as class or structure, and able to play with them, able to work with them. And then comes how do we use external packages, and finally comes how do we actually compile and run the program, and how do we also package it for production deployment. Now all the programs cannot be all the different languages. The different programming languages have their own way of compilation or running, and some are compiled language, some are interpreted language. So those things vary across programming languages, and there are different build tools specific to the programming language, which we also need to understand. Okay, so let's see each of the points one by one. Number one is the variables and the arrays. The variables and the arrays are basically your data store. For all the programming languages, the basic thing is variable or the arrays, which can store data of different atomic types, which may be integer or string or boolean or character. And it is known as variable because the data in the variable can change. As you can see in the code snippet there, that I declare a variable by the number, by the name number. It is a variable of type integer, and that is why I could store an integer there. And then I could also change the value of the integer. That's the main purpose of the variable, that the value within it can vary. And what are arrays? Arrays are basically a group of variables. So say for example, if I want to declare 100 integer variables, then instead of declaring 100 integer variables one by one, which is quite a bit of cumbersome work, I can actually declare an integer array consisting of 100 numbers, which is how we normally declare it here in the last line of the code snippet that I have written here. By the way, this is from the Java programming language, which is one of the most popular programming languages, but also in other programming languages, the syntax will vary a little bit, and In my other videos, we will see in parallel in two programming languages how the syntax varies while the concepts still remain the same. So that was about variables and arrays. The next comes the loops and the conditionals. So we often need to actually iterate through an array or maybe any kind of data structure, or maybe we need to execute some kind of if-else statement based on some logic. So here, again, I have given some code snippet from Java where I'm iterating through the array which is declared. So there is a for loop which is iterating through the 100 elements of the array, and it is assigning a fixed integer to each of the element. Now this is just by choice. It could have actually assigned different integers to different array items. This is just for a demonstration. So that was about loop and conditionals. Exceptions. Exceptions or errors, as the word suggests, is basically occurrence of an unwanted scenario during the program execution. And what we need to know is every programming language provides us with some constructs, with some techniques to actually deal with the errors, so that if we do not do that, then the program crashes or halts or does a premature exit at the time when the error occurs. So in order to prevent that from happening, all the programming languages provide some kind of syntax to actually handle the exception, and we will see how we can do that in any standard programming language. And then most of the programming languages, at least most of the mainstream programming languages like Java, JavaScript, Python, or Golang, all of them provide standard utilities within the core language to deal with, say for example, string, or to deal with dates, or to deal with file handling, etc. Because these are like very common and everyday programming tasks. For example, I'm reading a CSV file where every single line of the file is comma delimited, and it contains the different attributes of a person, which may be the person name and then a comma, and then person's age, and then the person's country and comma, and then the person's profession, comma, and then the person's gender. So with the help of some string utility, we can actually extract each of the properties separately from that comma delimited string. Similarly, also we need to do some kind of date handling in almost any program. Like we might need to extract the year, month, or the week date of any particular date. We might need to calculate age. We might need to calculate the difference of two dates, etc. And all this can be very easily handled with constructs which are shipped within all these programming languages. Now comes the class of the structure. Initially, we saw that the variables were of the atomic data types. What do I mean by atomic data types? By atomic data types, I mean the data types which can be only of a single type, like either an integer or a floating point or a string or a character or a boolean. But in real life, if we look about objects, and programming is about a representation of the real life objects. If you look at the real life objects like a person or a car or a house, it does not contain atomic properties. It contains quite a number of atomic properties. So basically it's a composition of multiple atomic properties. So basically any real life object has got many properties where each property can be of atomic type. For example, person, we can define a person as a custom data type which can consist of multiple atomic data types, like the person's name, which is a string, then the age, which can be an integer, then the gender, which can be a string, and so on and so forth. Similarly, for car, we can actually denote the name of the car, the maker of the car, as two different string variables. So that is how we construct certain composite data type or compound data type, which consists of multiple atomic data types. Such compound data types like the person or the car or house, they are known as class of the structure depending on the programming language. Like in C or in Golang, they are mostly known as structure or types, but in more object-oriented languages like in Java, Python,